don't know about you guys, but I always feel like spending some time outdoors is a good thing to offset the time spent in a card room. Anyways, back here at the home court property of Lucky Chances, looking to build off the recent vlog win streak, and in the first notable hand in this 3-5 no limit game, I get dealt Queen 10 of diamonds on the button. We're playing winner kills, which means that there's a $10 straddle put on in each hand by the player that won the previous hand. The only caveat is that if the winner is set to be the button on the next hand, the straddle goes to the big blind instead. This is to make it so that the button can't straddle, which I think is generally good for the game. And as opposed to Mississippi straddle where action starts to the left of the straddler, the action here at Lucky Chances is like a regular game in which action starts to the left of the big blind, but the straddler does have last action pre-flop. Okay, with that hopefully not too confusing description out of the way, there's a big blind straddle and an under the gun post in this one, and the low jack raises to 35. I call as the small blind, under the gun, and the big blind. We go 5 ways to 10-8-3 rainbow, so a pretty solid flat with top pair and backdoors. Checks the initial raise on the low jack, who bets 100. I call, the small blind calls, and we continue 3 ways to the 9 of clubs on the turn. Fairly juicy card as some draws complete and additional draws are introduced. After small blind checks, low jack is undeterred by this action board as he rips for 285 effective. With top pair and a gutter, I have a decent hand to call, but the problem is that I don't beat much value, and if I am ahead, low jack should have decent equity with a good draw. That said, it doesn't feel like a great spot, so I reluctantly let this one go, and the small blind folds as well. I then lose a hand with jack 10 that I could have won had I not been distracted by taking vlog notes, but looking to shake that off, I pick up pocket 9s and the low jack. We were playing 6-handed, I raise to 35, and hijack and big blind call. We go 3 ways to king queen deuce with a spade draw, so not a good flop for my hand, but it's a decent one for the range of holdings that I should have. After big blind checks, I see bet range for 35, hijack calls, and the big blind folds. We continue heads up to the turn, which comes a jack of hearts. Had this been a card that did not further connect with the board, I'd continue the story of having a strong hand, but in this case, I think I'm going to run into a fair number of good hands, so I check. And give up to hijack's bet of 75. The session is not starting off as I had hoped, and I get some card lag in the form of ace-10 offsuit from middle position, after I top off by adding on 200. I raise to 35 and pick up a boatload of callers as we take a flat 5 ways, which comes king 10 deuce with a diamond draw. Checks to me, and although we're multi-way, I still think I lean towards a c-bet for a few reasons. 1, I'm incentivized to c-bet range on a king high 2-tone board. 2, I could very well have the best hand that could use protection against a variety of draws. And 3, if I am up against a king, betting the flop affords me the opportunity to leverage future streets to get a weak king to fold. All that in mind, I bet 90, and only the small blind calls, who I perceive to be a solid thinking player. 4th street comes a queen of clubs, which is not a great card for the same reasons I mentioned in the previous hand. After small blind checks, I slow down and check back, and the river comes a 4 of hearts. Small blind checks again, and looking to just showdown and hopefully win against jack 10 or a brick diamond draw, I check back. Small blind tables, queen jack offsuit for the winning hand. I take another L, but do find some solace in the process, as I don't think I could have done too much different in this one, other than blast the turn and pray, which I don't think would have worked. No time to dwell though, as in the hand immediately after, I get dealt the Project Lock special with 5-6 of hearts. Since the small blind won the previous hand and is now the button, I'm actually the straddler in the big blind. The button opens to 35, and with what feels like aces since 5-6 suited is my favorite hand, I repop to 165. Button is ready for round 2 as he calls, and the flop comes ace-9-6, all red giving me bottom pair and backdoors. Can mix between checking or betting, and I go with the latter for 130. My opponent is wearing a State of Montana hat, and with no known professional teams in that area, it looks like he's made poker his sport and is coming after a Golden State Warriors fan as he rips for 568 effective. Crappy spot because even if I am ahead, there's a reasonable chance that I'm flipping at best, and he could even be an equity favorite with something like a combo draw. I hate to do it, but I fold the 5-6. That makes it 4 consecutive losing hands. Can I actually win a hand? Well, I get a good start with a premium, holding ace-king of diamonds. I add on for 500, bringing the total buy-in to 1700. A newly seated player and under the gun raises to 45, and I decide to just flat from the hijack, and the cutoff calls as well. The button then repops to 165 with about 200 back. It then folds through the low jack straddler and back to under the gun, who puts in a 4-bet to 545, and now it's back on me. What an interesting spot. On one hand, this is the best hand that I've been dealt, and it's a top 3 premium, On the other hand, given the action thus far, it feels like Under the Gun and button have really strong hands, and this could be a setup that I'm on the wrong end of. And after a bit of deliberation, I do something that I can't recall doing in recent history, as I fold Ace-King suited pre-flop. Was it a good decision? Well, I get to find out as cutoff surprisingly calls off for 500, and the button gets it in for 365. Only the button tables his hand before the community cards, and he has pocket aces. Let's take a run out.
I don't know, man.
The board ends up running out king high. Under the Gun rolls over pocket tens, and cutoff shows ace jack of clubs. Ace king would have been the winner of the side pot, and after doing the math had I got the money in against Under the Gun's 750-ish effective, I would have netted a roughly $200 profit from the side pot. So yeah, sort of made the right fold since one of the opponents did have aces, but I did miss out on what would have been a positive result. With an 0 for 5 start, I don't know how much more of this Vaseline-Less railing I can handle, as I pick up 8-6 of clubs in middle position. I raise to 35, low jack and Under the Gun call, and we take a flop 3 ways, which comes 9-7 for rainbow. Nice to connect relatively hard for the first time this session, and after Under the Gun leads for 50, I just flat since this board doesn't necessarily favor me, and the low jack folds. 4 street comes to ace of clubs, so a good card is I pick up a backdoor flush draw. If my opponent checks, I can bet and represent an ace, but I don't get that option as Under the Gun sticks with the aggressive action for a bet of 120. I proceed with a call, and the river comes to 8 of hearts, so I do improve to a pair. After a slight bit of tanking, Under the Gun checks, and while I do have some showdown value, I don't think an 8 is good against what should at least be a pair of 9s. What is good though is that I have removal to the strongest hand on this board, which is a straight, so in the hopes of 86ing my opponent, or in other words, getting him to fold a 9, I go with a bet of 340, and he goes well into the tank. And after some deliberation decides to let it go. Nice to finally secure a winning hand, and I look to Wesley Snipes my opposition in this next one like he did in Passenger 57. We are playing 7-handed, I raise to 35, and everyone except for the small blind calls. Looking to build momentum and smash a flop? It comes King Jack 7 with 2 spades and a heart. Unfortunately not what I had in mind, and after there's some betting action, I'm out of this one. I then get out a second premium of the evening with pocket tens. After low jack and hijack call, I raise to 65 from the small blind. Only the low jack and hijack call, and the flop comes 9-6-6 with 2 spades and a diamond. Great to flop an overpair, but I decided to play tricky and check since the low jack only has around 60 left. Ideally, he would go all in, and I could tailor my action based on what hijack does, but all of that doesn't matter as they both check. 4 street comes a deuce of hearts, and while I could check again for the same reasons as the flop, I don't want to potentially give another free card, so I fire 120. They both fold, and while this is a small pot, maybe, just maybe, the session is turning around as I get another premium, this time with red aces. I raise to 35, hijack and big blind call, and the flop comes the way I like my sake and not the way I like other areas of my life, as it comes dry. I see bet 40, and I get folds once again. That makes it 2 wins in a row as I give it another go with 5-7 of diamonds from Under the Gun 1. I raise to 35, middle position calls, and button repops to 135. I call as does middle position, and we go 3 ways to King 10-9 rainbow. Another miscue with this one unfortunately, and after it checks to the button who bets 300, I fold, middle position ends up ripping it for 500, and the button calls, and the board runs out with the 4 of diamonds, and the jack of spades. Button ends up winning with pocket 9s versus middle position's king jack of hearts. I then win a small pot and as a result have the straddle on from the small blind with ace king of spades. After early position, low jack and big blind call, I raise to 65. I weed out one player as big blind and low jack call, and we take a flop 3 ways which comes 9-6 deuce with 2 diamonds and a heart. And just like the Dallas Mavericks against the Dubs, I brick this one, so I check, and big blind puts out a hefty bet of 200. That puts an end to this one, and that brings us to the last hand of the session, holding, you guessed it, 5-7 of diamonds again. I raise to 35 from Under the Gun and pick up 3 callers from the hijack, button, and cutoff. The flop comes, Queen 7 deuce with 2 diamonds and a spade, so I flop hard with middle pair and a diamond draw. Being first to act, I can check and react accordingly, but given that I can have king queen, ace queen, pocket kings, and pocket aces, I opt to c-bet for 70. Hijack then decides to raise to 170. Cutoff and button fold, and definitely an interesting spot in terms of how to proceed. As far as my opponent's possible holdings, pocket sevens and deuces obviously have me in terrible shape, but there aren't too many combos of those hands. He can have a queen, but given that it's a single raise pot, he shouldn't have too many strong kickers. And lastly, he can have a better flush draw. As I weigh my options, I eyeball that my opponent has roughly 750 total. My thought is if I jam, I can maximize pressure and perhaps garner a fold from a queen and flush draws. But if he calls, I'm still doing okay against a queen and would be ahead against his flush draws. All that in mind, I decide to rip, and after a bit of deliberation, he calls off for 860 total, which is a bit more than I thought. Nevertheless, we go to a run out which comes the 8 of hearts and the 5 of hearts. So I river 2 pair and hopefully third time is a charm with this hand. But nope, he's got queen 7 of clubs for a better 2 pair. Alright, that's going to wrap it up for this session. Unfortunately, didn't get much going in the right direction. And most of the hands that I played, I lost. And the ones that I won, they were small. And that's just how poker goes sometimes. A hand or two can define the result for the session. In this case, it wasn't a good one. Bought in for a total of 2,500, out for 804. So book a pretty big loss of 1,696. Definitely didn't play my best, but we'll try to bounce back on the next session. And not going to end this on a sour note though. Let's end this on a positive note and do the WSOP giveaway. First off, I want to thank everyone for the support and for everyone that put in a submission. Good luck. We're going to be doing this old school style. Actually printed out everyone's names and have it all in this little bag here. And we're going to get the lovely help from my girlfriend. She's going to pull out a few names and let's shake that one up and then let's start with the first one. All right, first winner is going to be Michael Largent. Michael Largent, you are going to the WSOP.
Woo! Congrats!
All right, number 2. And the second seat is gonna go to Edwin Ng. Shout out to Edwin Ng, congratulations.
Congrats!
And there's going to be one more. As I mentioned, if the Warriors had won the game against the Memphis Grizzlies, I would be giving $100 away as the third giveaway. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, last winner. Let's do it. All right, and the winner of the $100 goes to... Oh man, I apologize if I butcher this name, but Nizamudi Yakubi. So that is going to be the third winner. Shout out to the 3 of you. All right, so yeah, thanks to everyone for participating. I'll be sending separate emails out to all 3 of you winners. Congratulations, thanks for the continued support. A few quick announcements to wrap up this video. I'll be in Las Vegas with Cindy from June 5th through the 8th, and then I'll do a more proper World Series of Poker trip from the 23rd to early to mid-July. So hope to see some of you out there. Definitely will see 2 of you out there during the late part of June. And yeah, see you in the next video. Thanks for the support.